Hey, morning folks, how you doing? My watch has died, but it's somewhere after 4 a.m. In the morning, and I am up working, trying to get my website live. Starting a business is a busy job. But anyway, all that aside, we said we were going to talk about topwater fishing, and I was going to take you through my thoughts on it, my experiences with it, what I do with it, when I use it, when I don't use it, why I think it can be at times the most effective form of fishing, and at other times a total waste of time. So, um, we talked a bit about the lures, but we're obviously going to talk a bit more about them. Uh, One of my all-time favorite topwater lures, the Sami, right? That's the Sami 80. I fish it in the 100, the 110. I also fish the Sami 60. I go really small. Why do I like this lure? Very simple. Action. It has a really nice action. It's a very easy lure to control. I've had lots of fish on this just dead sticking. So just casting it, and as it drifts across down the channel, whoomph, up the fish comes out of the weed bed, grabs it, and we're on. As I say, a very versatile and very useful lure. It also comes in a really nice range of colours. That is IU, I believe. Very natural. I mean, looks like a smelt or whatever we have in our systems. Okay. Another lure I'm using a lot of at the minute. And listen, no noise. Okay. Silent. The IMA Salt Skimmer Silent. I really like it, particularly in really clear water. It's a visual lure. It's a lure they're going to see. Again, it's action. It sits right back down, and you can just walk it very slowly, or indeed very quickly sometimes, across the water. Which leads us to the question, so how fast do I fish my topwater lures? Well, I vary it. Right, it's that simple. I sometimes I fish them fast, and I see, do they want it fast, and then I fish it slow. See, are they being a bit fussy? Do they want it nice and slow? Sometimes I literally rip it across the water if I know a fish is there, and I'm trying to get a reaction strike, and that has often happened. Right. Generally, though, I'm kind of fishing it at a medium pace. I'm putting in some pauses. What I like to do is I figure out which way the tide is running. Obviously, I cast the lure up the tide, and I let it work down with the tide and just tick it along. So the thing about topwater fishing is, aside from the sight fishing aspect of it, where you can actually see the fish, and I'm just going to say this out straight. A lot of the fish that bass anglers think are mullet aren't mullet, right? They might be mullet in there, right? But there's bass too. I don't know how many times I've seen a big shoal of fish, and someone says, "Oh, look at the mullet," and I go, "Yeah, look at the mullet," and I throw a Sami 60 or a Sami 80 in there. I give it a couple of wiggles, and next thing it explodes, and off we go, right to the races. It's a form of fishing I love. I love the engagement of it. You're constantly active. You're watching that lure, right? It's always when you turn around to talk to your buddy or something or whatever. Stephen Flynn, you're responsible for this. You're talking around to how the chats, that your lure ends up getting smashed and you miss it. It seems to be kind of Murphy's Law, right? The minute you stop concentrating, the lure gets hit. As I say, right, why I like it is because it's incredibly effective. I mean, you can fish it in a foot of water, right? And bass will sit incredibly shallow. I want you to think about something. When we're shore fishing, right, everybody is trying to cast as far as they can out, Oh, cast out as far as you can. But you put them in a boat, right? And suddenly everybody's trying to cast as close to the rocks as they possibly can. And I'm sitting there going, well, hang on a second. You wanted to cast out the other way. Now you want to cast in this way. Which is it? It's kind of a human psychology. You have to think about it. Like actually the fish are usually at your feet, right? Or somewhere fairly close to that. They really like shallow water. They're not afraid of it, right? It doesn't bother them, right? They're not like, oh, quick, get back into 10 deep. That doesn't mean they're not in 30 foot of water. They are at times, and deeper, right? But they're not scared to sit in a foot and a half of water. I do a lot of estuary fishing, right? And I'm creeping the back of an estuary. I don't know how many times I've spooked double figure fish that are sitting in what essentially is a puddle, right? And you're doing your best, right? But it's a long day, you get tired, creeping in, and whoosh, this thing takes off, and you just go, oh, Jesus Christ, what have I done? So, how many doubles have I had on top water? I was trying to count and remember. I'm not sure. It's certainly over 5 or 6 anyway. I had one last year. I was very sick. I got one day fishing. I just had enough of being in bed, and I said, bleep this. I'm going to try and fish, and I paid a heavy price for it, but I got a beauty of a fish, right? So when do I use top water? Well, I use it when I think it's effective, right? So if you're an estuary fisherman, like myself, right? I do all types of fishing, but really my first love is the estuary. I just love it. It's a beautiful environment. It concentrates the bass. There tend to be bigger bass in there, right? In Ireland, there are no restrictions on fishing the estuaries. You can fish them when you like, wherever you like, however you like. Apart from with a net or a spear gun, which is the latest trend in this country. So you're waiting for the tide. So the best times to fish an estuary, well, that depends on your own estuary. Right? I can tell you that the estuaries I fish, the best time to fish them is the last 3 hours of the drop and the first 2 hours of the rise. Okay, but that's not ubiquitous. It doesn't mean that every estuary fishes that way, and it doesn't mean that every part of my estuary, one of my favorite estuaries, fishes that way. At high water, it's clear I'm going to go and look for the fish in the back of the estuary because they've moved in, right? Why do fish go into an estuary? Very simply, they go in to feed. Okay, there are 2 types of fish in the estuary. There are fish that live in the estuary, and then there are fish that come to the estuary on the lunar cycle to feed. Okay, so you got a resident stock of fish that are probably there, to be honest with you, 365 days a year, certainly in the southeast of Ireland. I have caught bass in a certain estuary in every month of the year, right? They don't leave. I've had double figure bass in March. Sometimes in March, I get phenomenal fishing because the bass have come ashore to chase the small sea trout. They just love them. They absolutely munch them, right? We get these guys, sorry you can't see me. These guys, like less than half a pound. We get them in the millions, they're skittering everywhere and da-da-da. We also get the, again, you can't see me, but we get the lumps, right? I met somebody last night, I won't say his name because that's not fair, but he told me the 6 pound fish. I was like, that is a super sea trout, right? But I digress, we're off point. So, top water fishing in an estuary, incredibly effective, right? So what am I looking for? Well, typically the best thing to do to approach fishing any mark is to go there at low water, because then you get to see all the structure, you get to see what's in front of you. You can have a think about, well, where are the bass going to be? Why are they there? What are the likely holding points? Which way do they run? Blah, 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 right? In the estuary, one of the estuaries I fished, there are 1, 2, 3 main channels that go in, and then several offshoots, right? and then you've got the very back, which is like a salt marsh, blah, 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 right? Nobody fishes one of the channels. Well, nobody apart from myself, as far as I can figure out. Nobody fishes the two very back channels, right? Because they think the bass don't go in there. Fine. All the better, right? It leaves me on my own. I get to be with, plus I can bring the dog, right? Because he's a bit of a lunatic. So I can't let him off the lead around people. He tends to get a bit shirty with other dogs, right? We've made him that. He's been promoted. He's the chief financial officer. So you look at those channels and you think, right, okay, so the fish are coming in on the first of the tide. Where are they going, right? Well, some of them are traveling the whole way in, right? They're just scoot and they're gone. Others are not. They come and they hold up in spots. They wait on food. They find cover. They find, if you're ever at the front of an estuary in low water, you'll see the sand is like this, right? If it's like that, that's a really good sign. Chances are there's bass there, right? Because what will happen is on the dropping tide, right, the bass will sit down into the hollow. So they're out of the tide, they're not having to work, right? They can sit there expending very little energy and they can pop up to hit whatever goes over their head. So what's going over their head? Well, hopefully it's your lure, right? Now, here we go, the Pachinko. This is the 125, the Yellowback, right? Many years ago, 20 years ago, I think, I caught a double figure fish on the 145 version of this, and it got a lot of kind of attention or whatever. And it made the Yellowback lure certainly very popular. Why I like the Yellowback so much is because I can see it, right? Honestly, I don't think the chartreuse on the back really is what catches the fish at all. It's the action of the lure, right? Really what they can see is this. I've said this before. They can see the white underbelly. Maybe every now and again they see a flash of chartreuse or something, but mostly they're seeing the white underbelly. But they're also seeing the action. Now, this particular lure has an incredible action, right? And it can be fished. It's so versatile. I mean, you can give it dunk, 3-4 pulls, let it sit back down, it'll sit like that and float, and then you can pull it up again and give it, and it looks very much like wounded prey, right? The takes I get on this lure tend to be explosive, right? I've fished it in really fast current. Do I have one? I do, actually. I'm organized today. The 145, okay? Great noise, right? Great rattle. Like, they can hear it, right? What I'm looking for, water I really like, okay, is water that's sandy. So water where sand has been churned up. It gives the bass tremendous confidence, right? You might think, oh, it's dirty, don't fish it. No, it's perfect. Like, they're sitting in it, they're like, yeah. And they can feel, they've got the lateral line, they can feel stuff that's going by them or going over them. And boom, they can hit it, right? I'm going to show you some footage. I've just bought a GoPro. I'm going to show you some footage, not of where I fish, but of how I fish, right? In the river. And I'll show you how murky the water is. And have I got one? Okay, I have. Supplied to me by John in Waterford Angling, who has a fantastic range of lures, by the way, and is a general all-around nice guy. But this here, the feed popper, and look at the size of it. Most guys would go, oh my God, that's way too big, no, it's not. They'll absolutely crunch it. I've had fish everywhere from 40 centimeters to 80 centimeters hit that lure, right? Popper fishing kind of went out of fashion, right? It was like it was something crude about it or something. Actually, incredibly skillful way to fish, right? A little trick is take those trebles off, okay? Put an assist. I wish I had one here to show you. I have one upstairs, sorry. Put an assist hook on the middle ring, right? And a big single on the back. particularly if you're a boat fisherman, right? Because if you use this with the trebles on, you're going to spend more time getting the lure out of the net than you are fishing, right? And where we fish, you'll actually see the bass coming at you because the birds are hitting the water. Dunk, dunk, dunk. You see swirls, fish feeding on the top, right? That's the time. Up, out with the popper. Here we go. Cast it up the tide. Pop, pop. Let it sit. Pop, pop. Let it sit. Pop, pop. Right, and then just the whole way to the boat. Oftentimes I've gotten it right to the edge of the boat, and whoom, fish will hit it. So have your drag, make sure your drag is loose enough, tight enough to hook the fish, but loose enough that he's not going to break you off, right? Particularly take account of the tide. I'm sometimes fishing in 5-6 knots of tide, right? You get a 7-pound fish that kites with 7 knots of tide behind it. That's a lot of power, right? It can really test your tackle, right? Speaking of which, I'm going to Dublin today. I'm picking up some favourite rods. I can't wait to get my hands on these goddamn things. Like I had the Black Swan in my hands the other day, and I just thought, Jesus, this is an awesome piece of kit, right? So I'm really looking forward to seeing what they've got for the boat. I've just fitted a Garmin Eco Map 102 SV. Got that done yesterday, so I'm on the river today for high water. So super excited. It's going to be a good day. We'll see if I can get my buddy Charlie Nelson on a few fish. We've been having a tough trip so far, but I honestly believe that it's about to fire, right? For the naysayers who say the bass are gone, they're not gone. There's a huge head of fish around. I mean, I've snaps on the sonar that would make your knees tremble. I mean, they're just stacked up, absolutely stacked up, but they're full. They're sitting there digesting what they ate during the night, right? Like, I think to catch bass at the minute, you probably want to be finishing fishing now. You know what I mean? The minute the light comes on, the bite goes off, right? Now in the river, different scenario because it's murky water and da-da-da. It's about state of tide. Usually we fish low water, but apparently they are now feeding on the high water. So, you know, a bit of local information is helpful. Always good to have some fishing buddies who can give you the belly on what's happening out there. So, back to lures. Won't leave home without one. Okay? Now I know that my mate Paddy and Richard Cake in the UK, who I fish with every year. Richard's a fantastic rod builder. He's the rep for Major Craft in the UK. Paddy's an okay fisherman, like, he's alright, he's not great. That's revenge. That man has slagged me for 20 years. Just great to get some revenge. No, he's actually a really seriously talented angler, Paddy. He's great fun to fish with too. They're fishing the beaches in southern England and they are catching some serious fish. But those two guys are absolute fans of. I mean, I don't know if they use anything else, right, to be honest with you. Okay. Low water in the estuary, this thing will absolutely slay. So it's the Lucky Craft Gunfish 110, right? I fished it in the 90, right, which is a lovely little lure too. It's actually quite a bit smaller than this guy, right? But this just has a lovely splash in action. It's just like blap, 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 stop, blap, 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 blap. You know, tick, 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 and then stop it. And it is just fantastic. That, not a particularly favourite colour of mine. I don't like, it's a bit too silvery on the bottom. They have a IU or whatever. It's that very natural creamy browny back with the white belly. It's got some red gills on it and stuff. Now, not that the red gills make any difference at all really, but it's the white belly and the light colour on the body, I think, that makes the difference. Because remember, in very shallow water the bass can see quite a bit, right? But that's an awesome lure. It's as good today as it was 20-25 years ago when we started. fishing it. So, so lure size and color are important without a shadow of a doubt. You know, I've had 73 centimeter fish on a 60 centimeter lure, right? If they're on the small stuff, it can be the difference between success and failure. Where you fish them, really important. I mean, obviously, right, if you've got a bit of reef, I mean, if you're a boat fisherman, you'll know bass don't just sit over the reef. They like to sit on the edge of the reef, right? So the reef will be here. There'll always be one or two fish up on the top. But mainly you'll see the fish sitting on the edge, right? They're just at the edge of the flow, particularly on the tip of the reef, right? Always fish the tip if you can reach it or whatever. But that again is down to yourself. You'll work that out as you fish your ground. I just want to show you in terms of size, and this is definitely lately my favorite topwater lure. The one I've been fishing the most recently, and it's the Duo pencil, right? The Realis pencil. I mean, listen to that, right? That's the small guy. Here he is there, little demon. And that's the big guy, right? Like, it might be hard to judge just how big that is. I mean, it's a 140, but it's huge. But it works, and it works really well. And where I like to fish it is, actually it's the 130, sorry. Where I like to fish it is when our sandbars in our estuaries are emptying. What you get is you get this flowy, muddy, not muddy, but sandy water. And the fish fall off the sandbar, and they kind of sit in there, and they're waiting for all the other stuff to get washed back down, and they can just pick it off, boom, 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 or up, dump, 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 right? And that's a lethal time for one of these guys. Generally, when I'm fishing big because I need to cast a long way, and I usually need to cast a long way to reach like a hole or a dip or whatever that the bass are sitting in to hunt, right? Talking about topwater lures wouldn't be complete without where it all began, right? The Azuri Alley Magnet, what a lure, eh? I mean, I remember fishing this thing. I didn't know how to fish it. I had some big ignorant looking rods that I bought in Wexford. I mean, Jesus Christ, yeah, you know, you wouldn't, you wouldn't bait hedges with it now these days. It was a ridiculous thing, you know, and I had a fixed spool reel with mono line and everything. But I used to just cast this thing out and retrieve it because I hadn't a clue, like, and no one was more surprised than me that I actually caught fish on it. You know what I mean? But like, still an absolutely fantastic little lure, right? Will absolutely hammer fish, right? I don't fish it now because I kind of want to keep it. It's nostalgia, right? You know, there was another color. I preferred actually the other color at the time, and it was right. It did work better for some reason. But yeah, a little beauty. So back to the big fellas and the biggest story. Right. Now, I haven't actually fished this yet, but you can see it's brand new. Those hooks are coming off and singles are going on, and it will not make any difference to my hookup rate, and it'll make a huge difference to the bass survival rate, right? Lure like that tends to pick out the bigger fish, right? Especially if fish are competing, right? The big fish will be on that like a flash. And I mean, it casts like a bullet. Now, if big lures are not your thing, and I know that a lot of people are fishing lighter rods and they can't handle bigger lures, then there's his little brother, right? Lovely bit of chartreuse on the back. Again, not really for the fish, more for the fishermen so I can see it. But that has a fantastic action, right? So, bottom 3 hours of the tide, the sandbank's empty, forces the fish into the channel. That's the time to start hitting the channels with your top water lures. Pick your pinch points, read your estuary. Where's the spot that the fish must travel through, right? If they've got to go through there and you're stood on the corner, right, casting your top water up the tide. Yes, you'll cast some fish if you cast down the tide and pull it back across or whatever, but you'll cast way more if your fish is moving, your lure is moving with the tide and bopping along, right? Fish are not stupid, right? And particularly not big fish. I mean, they're big fish for a reason. They've been around for 25 years. Why? Because they're smart. They've managed not to get caught, right? And if they have caught, hopefully they've been released and revived properly and properly looked after. I want to talk a bit about a tackle house lure, right? The Blue Ocean K10. For some reason, this lure never took off. I think it's because of its look. It looks a bit simplistic or a bit like, well, whatever. Like, you know, shallow feed, as they call it here, right? Feed shallow, right? Have you got a shallow feed there? Yes, right? The feed shallow, I mean, you know, still as good as it was the day we bought it, right? And don't leave home without it. But this K10 never took off. But I mean, it's an extraordinary lure. It's as good as any other topwater of its type that I've fished, right? Again, I want to show you another lure that hasn't really taken off here, but French fellas would kill you to get their hands on, and this is not available anymore, this particular color. This is the original Frosty. That lure is 25 years old, right? That's the Frosty in what they used to call sand eel. I don't think you can get it anymore. I could be wrong, right? What I like about the Frosty is that it's a bit slower than the Pachenko and it fishes a bit wider. So if you pull it, it kind of goes right off to the side. You pull it again and it slides back the other way. So you can fish it really nice and slow and it just sits down like that. So there's lots of lure for them to grab and boom, boom, boom. Again, my good friend Charlie Nelson is going to show me today how to properly rig a little assist hook here, because we're going to be doing quite a bit of boat fishing, and I just will not. Generally, I'm moving away from trebles anyway. You know, I fish singles on the needles all the time, and they're much, much better. You're definitely doing less harm to the fish, and the way things are at the minute, I think that's really, really important, right? So, as I was saying, pick your pinch point and be there, right? Find out where they are on the very low water, right? Usually it's going to be somewhere in the front of the estuary. Maybe it's out sitting on the beach or wherever it comes out in a shallow bay, and they'll be sitting around or whatever. Maybe they come around and go on to the beach and they run the beach or whatever. But you find those fish and fish with them, right? I fish, I know a lot of you know I'm from Waterford in Southeast Ireland. Tramore is a pretty famous beach. I fish Tramore in the daytime with topwater lures in the flat calm, and I catch fish, right? No problem. What I do is I look for the big beds of weeds that have been washed up and stuff, and you'll always see there are bass sitting at the edge of those. Blah, 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 blah. I'll tell you a story another day and I'll show you the fish when we come to talk about soft plastics. This I love, right? This is the Jinko 125 in mackerel. I just think it's super duper. Right, I really like, and it sits like that, so the bass are going to see that colour, right? You know, I like to fish really quite natural looking lures, I really do. Sometimes I go for the bright stuff, you know, the really mad looking stuff, and it works, right? You know, I was talking to someone the other day, and he told me he had an 11 3/4 pound fish on one of these K10s, and it was the one with the big orange face and the brown back and the red. I mean, in the shop, you'd look at it and you'd go, Jesus, I wouldn't buy that thing. But they work. They really, really work. Okay. One more lure to show you. Well, a few more lures to show you, but I'm going to show you this one. Splash Popper by Lucky Craft, right? You can see, oh, Jesus, trying to stick the hooks in your fingers when you're doing a YouTube video. It's a good idea. You can see this baby has had a bit of abuse, right? It's blinded one eye, but it still works a treat. Like, I will never forget the day my engine failed and a friend of mine pulled me out and anchored me off a reef, and he said, there's no bass. He said, I'm going out pollock fishing. So off he went pollock fishing, and as the tide flooded over the reef, I noticed some activity on the surface of the water, and the wind started to get up, and I was getting a bit worried. I was like, Jesus, there's not much freeboard on this thing. Is he going to come back or what? But I kept fishing anyway, and I had 3 fish over 9 pounds, one after the next, on this thing. I mean, just incredible. And they hunted it down. I'll never forget the last one. The lure was maybe 15 foot from the boat, and I just saw the mouth open like that behind the lure, and my knees were trembling, and I didn't know whether to pop it or pull it or do what, and the fish just boom. And I mean, just, it's what we live for, right? You know, people who are passionate about angling will know what I mean about that feeling. I mean, it's just nothing like it. You know, I had a guy in the end of the boat who hadn't caught a fish. He was going bananas, so I had to stop at that point and kind of show him what he was doing wrong and stuff, you know. I wasn't guiding or anything. I don't fish when I guide, as a rule, because I'm not. That's not what I'm being paid for, right? But again, a super lure, like Lucky Craft. Just, oh my God, I wish there was a Lucky Craft shop. That's what I wish. I really do. You know, lures come in and out of fashion. Ignore that rubbish. Like, it's just rubbish. Oh, the bass know what that is. They don't. Fish just as well as they always did. You know, like, I don't understand why salmon anglers, for example, have fished the exact same lure, right, for hundreds of years, and the flying sea and the Devon minnow and everything else, and caught loads and loads of fish on them. But bass anglers seem to think we need to have new lures all the time because our fish are like super bright. They're mensa of fish or something. I don't know. Right. I want to show you one more thing. A lure really like the OSP Bent Minnow. Right. Now, it casts like a Wellington, right? That's the downside. Okay, so it's probably going to be more interesting to boat fishermen. But if you throw this thing out there and give it 2 tugs, it has the loveliest action. It just looks like a wounded fish. And whatever it is, the bass come up for it. Have I shown you the Esperette? I don't have the Esperette with me. Right, if you got one in your local tackle shop, buy it. They're a super company. Beautiful action, lovely wide walk on it, big rattle, you know, it's just made for big Spanish bass. Right, we're going down there this year in October. I'm going to have 4 or 5 species of shore fish in front of us. We'll do a day popping for tuna and stuff, but really my love is shallow water inshore fishing. So, you know, great. I love tuna. I'd love to, you know, catch tuna and all the rest, but I'd much rather catch an 11 or 12 pound bass, right? Slightly different style of top water, right? The Bay Rough Manic, right? Again, it sits like so, and I just cast and retrieve very, very slowly. Just retrieve it back, and it's just wiggle, 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 and it just suddenly disappears. Fish on, right? So there's loads of information about lures and how to fish them, right? An awesome time to fish is as the tide turns, right? So when you get to low water and the tide is swinging around and starting to flood back in, whatever it is about that turn, it makes those bass kind of, whoa, here we go. And that's really when I do very, very well on top water, right? First hour of the flood in an estuary, fish are coming in and they're like, they're looking around, they're cruising, right? And you put something over their head, they'll have a pop at it, right? The other thing is, if a fish has a crack at your lure, keep the lure moving and then stop it, right? And then keep it moving again. He might have another go, right? As long as he hasn't felt the hooks and as long as he's showing up behind it, you're still in there with a shot. I remember years ago taking the water for a chap, fishing the Bannow estuary, and I cast the feed popper across the flowing channel up tide. There was about 2 hours left in the tide. There's huge southwesterly wind on that day, so huge big wave, and it was pop, and you see the fish bust up out of it. Popped it again, popped it, popped it, popped it. He kept coming, just kept bumming, bumming, bumming. I was pulling it away from him on purpose. And just as I got to the edge of the water, I stopped the lure and he, boom, nailed it. I just did it because I wanted to show your man, look, this is how this thing works or whatever. So that's it, pretty much, folks. I mean, you don't want to listen to me for a whole hour talking about top water lures, right? You know, so mix it up, vary your retrieve, vary your speed. Think about your fishing, think about where you're fishing. Go to your estuary if it's an estuary you're fishing. Go there at low water, look around, see where the food is. Ask yourself which channels the bass are running, right? Find a point, right, what I call a pinch point, right? Find a narrow point in the channel, right, where lots of fish have to go past you, and concentrate your fishing there, right? Yeah, can't think of anything else to tell you. No, except for tight lines. Have a great day. I am going to have a really great day. I'm going to Dublin to pick up some rods, and then at about 1 or 2 o'clock I'm going to launch the boat and have a crack at the bass on the top water over the high water. The fishing's been really, really tough for me. It's just, there are loads of fish there. I've seen some absolute cracking fish in the last week and not been able to catch them, you know. But that's fishing. You just got to keep going. Either way, I'm happy to be on the coast. I will say this just in closing. A lot of people know I was very sick. I got long COVID. A lot of people are still very sick with long COVID. I'm going to run some kind of charity event and try and raise some money to help the people who are still suffering. And I would appreciate your support because it certainly changed my life. When you find yourself in bed, not able to make it to your own kitchen or able to cook food for yourself, it will change how you see life and how you see people and how you see yourself. And you will, well, for me, I just want to be happy and I want to be nice and I want to be decent to people and I want to help people who have less than I have. So we're gonna do a bit of that, and I would really appreciate your support because it's a real thing, and some people are very, very, very sick. And believe you me, I suffered in a way I didn't believe was possible as a human being, and it wasn't quick. It was 2 years, and in 2 years I began to recover a little bit. So it's something I'm passionate about. So stay in touch with the channel. Thank you very much for your support, and thanks again for the kind words with the podcast. At 51, I'm taking a risk starting a business. I'm an established academic, and here I am having a crack at bass fishing again with a bunch of guys who are half my age, but I'll give them a good run for their money. So I wish everyone well. Tight lines out there, folks. Have fun. That's the main thing. Yeah, and we'll talk to you soon. Cheers. Bye. Look after yourselves.